Grace Kids. Welcome back to Grace Kids TV. My name is Miss Kristen, and I serve here in the Untitled Ministries at Grace Church. It's great to be joining you today. In today's story, we are going to learn about a time when God provided manna. Have you ever eaten a food that you weren't quite sure what it was? Maybe it was a special dish from a different culture that you've never had before. Or maybe it was a mystery meat that was served at your school cafeteria. Today, we will learn about a time when God's people named a food, "What is it?" because they weren't quite sure what they were eating. God provided water and manna for his people's physical hunger. Later, God provided his son Jesus for our spiritual hunger. In the Bible, Jesus said, "I am the bread of life." That's found in John 6:35. The Israelites needed to live on bread and water, but we and anyone else who believes in Jesus will live forever. Now, before we can get to today's story, let's head over to Grace Kids Trivia to see what you can remember from last week's story about how God keeps his promises and has sent us Jesus. Good luck!
Question 1. True or false? After sin entered the world with Adam and Eve, God promised that a rescuer would come from Eve's family. And the answer is true. This was true. God's people waited for God to keep his promise. And this leads us to our next question for the day. Question 2. True or false? Sometimes God spoke to his people through prophets. Prophets were people who collected money from people to make a profit. And the answer is false. This was definitely false. But hopefully you enjoyed that little play on words. Prophets were actually people who got a message from God and told it to the people. Isaiah was one of the prophets that we heard a little bit about last week. And that leads us to question 3. True or false? Thousands of years before Jesus was born, Isaiah shared a message about God sending a rescuer. And the answer is true. This was true. Again, this was thousands of years before Jesus was even born. But Isaiah said that the rescuer would be called the Messiah, which means the anointed one or the chosen one. He also wrote, "The people are living in darkness, but they will see a great light." He said that God will keep his promise and that Jesus would come as a child and that he would be a king. Question 4. True or false? Isaiah said that Jesus would only have one name when he would be born. His only name would be Jesus. And the answer is false. Although this one might be a little bit tricky or even confusing, it was false. Isaiah said that Jesus will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, and the Prince of Peace. All of Jesus' names tell us who Jesus is and the great things he does for us. And our final question of the day. Question 5. True or false? Jesus saves sinners. He died on the cross and rose from the dead to rescue us from our sin. And the answer is true. This one is absolutely true. God keeps his promises, and God promised to send a rescuer. So he sent his son Jesus into the world as a baby, which we just learned about last month around Christmas time. And as we continue our journey through the Old Testament and later into the New Testament in the Bible, we'll learn how Jesus died on the cross to save us from our sin.
Hey everyone, I'm Megan.
And I'm Jessie.
Megan, my mom made muffins and asked me to bring you the leftovers.
Oh, yum! Your mom makes the best muffins. I will put these in the freezer when I get home.
What, you're not gonna eat them?
Oh, I plan to eat them all right, just not today. I'm gonna put them in the freezer so they last longer. Then, when I want one, I can just pull it out and let it thaw out.
Oh, that is smart.
Thank you. Hey, that actually reminds me of today's Bible story.
Are there muffins in today's Bible story?
No, but God did give his people bread in the wilderness. He told them to gather only what they needed to eat that day. He didn't want them to save any for later, except on the 6th day. He told them to gather what they needed for that day and the next day.
Is it because they didn't have freezers back then?
Well, they didn't, but that's not why God didn't want them to save food. He wanted to teach his people to trust him. Let me tell you the story. Moses led the Israelites from the Red Sea to the wilderness. The people got hungry and they complained. "We are starving," they told Moses. But Moses did not have any food. A cloud of God's glory appeared, and God said to Moses, "Tell the Israelites that they will eat meat for dinner. In the morning, they will eat bread until they are full. Then they will know that I am their God." Quail came into the camp that night, and the people ate meat for dinner. In the morning, fine flakes like frost were on the ground. "What is it?" the Israelites asked. Moses said, "God has given you bread to eat." The Israelites called the bread manna. God told his people to gather only what they needed to eat that day. If they gathered too much, the leftovers went bad. On the 6th day, they gathered twice as much so they could rest on the 7th day. God wanted his people to trust him and obey him. The Israelites traveled in the wilderness for many years, going wherever God told them to go. One day they stopped to camp, but they had no water. "Moses, give us something to drink," they said. But Moses did not have any water. "God, what should I do?" Moses prayed. God showed Moses a rock and told him to hit the rock with his staff. Water came out of the rock, and the people drank the water. God was with his people. When God's people were hungry and thirsty, God gave them food and water. Later, God sent his son Jesus. Jesus said, "I am the bread of life." Bread and water give people life for a little while, but Jesus gives people life forever.
For our craft today, all that you're going to need is a half a sheet of any color construction paper, the paper that has a rock, some water and a staff, something to color with, some scissors, and a glue stick or liquid glue. And I'm going to show you exactly how to make this craft. Are you ready? Alright, so first you're going to color the rock gray. You're going to color the water blue. And if you don't have these colors, you can ask somebody in your class if they can share with you. Then you're going to color the staff or the stick brown. out each of these pieces. And if it's too hard for you to cut around the shapes, you can cut a rectangle. I'm gonna kind of just cut but leave a little bit of white, which is fine. If you're older, you could cut it and make sure it's like perfectly cut, the shapes are perfectly cut out. Okay, so then you're going to take your glue, and first you're going to glue, and then you're going to take your glue and your paper. You're going to glue the rock on first. And then you're going to glue the stick on, or the staff. Show it hitting the rock, and then you're going to glue the water on. And if you're older, there's plenty enough space if you wanted to add the Bible verse from the story. That would be a cool way to decorate your paper the rest of the way. I'm excited for you to use this craft to share the story that we learned today. And at the bottom of the direction paper, it says, Moses prayed, God, what should I do? God showed Moses a rock and told him to hit the rock with his staff. Water came out of the rock, and the people drank the water. God was with his people, just like God is with us today. God gave his people food and water. Later, God gave the world his son, Jesus. Jesus gave people life forever. It's such an awesome story and a craft that you can share with others to show how Jesus is always with us. I hope that you guys have a wonderful week. Thanks for watching Grace Kids TV.